So, good afternoon, and welcome to the third of our 8 sessions in the Outreach series. My name is Christine Krieger, and I am the Professional Development Consultant for the Colorado State Library, and I will be acting as tech support for today's session. As we go through today's session, we are going to ask that you keep your video off and remain muted until we get to questions at the end. You can feel free to ask questions throughout via chat, and I'll keep my eye out for that. And then at the end, we might have some time for you to ask questions verbally if you all desire. So I will monitor the chat as we go through to make sure that questions are addressed. So without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce staff from the High Plains Library and your fabulous presenters for today. We have Brittany, Megan, and Lindy. So I'm going to turn it over to you all.
All right. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everyone, for attending our session today, talking about providing outreach services. I'm Lindy McCaleb. I'm an outreach librarian, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And presenting with me today is Megan Lowry, the mobile services supervisor, and her pronouns are she, her, and hers. And Brittany Rains, the Move manager, and her pronouns are she, her, and hers. Now, before we start, we would like to take a moment of mindfulness. The High Plains Library District acknowledges with respect that the land that we are on today in Weld County is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples. This was also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other native tribes. We recognize the indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it. And we further acknowledge the forceful removal of the populations after the Medicine Lodge treaties and atrocities such as the Sand Creek Massacre. Our intentions are based on our desire to ground and acknowledge and support a state of change. We bring our increased awareness and consciousness into this space now and into the spaces we inhabit. We believe this land acknowledgement is a process of deepening, strengthening our relationship with personal power in the land. We acknowledge that we are strangers on stolen land. With this acknowledgement, we bring energy that infuses presence, clarity, and a deep longing to be in alignment. All right, thank you. You can go to the next slide. All right, so a little bit about our objectives today. Today we're going to learn about different types of outreach services. We're going to learn about different priority populations and the services and programs designed to suit the needs of those populations that we serve. We're going to discuss about community requests and how this shapes services and how it aligns with priority populations. We will also discuss and learn about challenges that we experience when delivering outreach services and programs. So a little bit about the different types of outreach services that we provide in the High Plains Library District. Our outreach department provides mobile services with the 4 vehicles that we have in our fleet. We provide programming. We provide Book-a-Librarians, which is where people can schedule one-on-one help with a librarian. We also provide many virtual and online services, as well as education support to schools and other organizations. And we also just provide a lot of site locations that are not within a physical library.
Help us focus our efforts. Every 3 years, we evaluate our priority populations to allow us to adapt to changing demographics in our community. Which are new Americans, immigrants, and refugees. Our largest community partnership in relation to these populations are the Immigrant and Refugee Center, HIPPY, which stands for Home Instruction for Parents and Preschool Youngsters, and our D6 Family Center. We also focus on our homeless populations, working with our local homeless shelter, the Guadalupe Community Center, and our cold weather shelter, and our Housing Navigation Center. Seniors are a pretty consistent priority population from year to year, as there is also a presence and need from seniors in independent living facilities, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers. We also focus on re-entry populations, community members that are transitioning from correctional institutions back into society. We work with ICCS, or Intervention Community Correction Services, also known as our halfway house, and Alternative Homes for Youth, which is a facility that focuses on young adults. Our underserved populations are our largest portion of our priority populations that are connected to different types of barriers. Some of these barriers are economical, and we work with after-school clubs, and others are geographical. We have a very large service area with over 4,000 square miles, so we have a high number of rural residents that we strive to serve as well. Our services for newcomers focuses mainly on getting patrons prepared to pass their naturalization test. We partner with the IRC to host citizenship classes and provide support to teachers as we celebrate those who pass their naturalization test. We host an annual naturalization ceremony. In 2020, it was the first year that we live streamed that event due to COVID restrictions. So that was really neat. This is a very complex event, as it does require us to work with the United States Customs and Immigration Services and local and state representatives, which we like to invite every year. We also provide lending library services inside the IRC, which is a small library that we staff 4 days a week to provide library services, from those one-on-one book a librarian help to checking out library materials. We also provide specialized story times we call Little Learners that are tailored to immigrant and refugee children that have limited English language skills once a week. During the past 3 summers, we have also focused a mobile service stop in a highly dense community area of immigrants and refugees, and we call this our international neighborhoods. Our intention is to reach out to this population to expose them to library services and library staff. We also try to increase our exposure with the immigrant and refugee population through food programs and handing out take and make kits and additional library resources. Also, in the past year, we published 3 multilingual nursery rhyme booklets in Somali, French, and Burmese, thanks to a Buell grant that funded that project. We worked with community ambassadors to collect native nursery rhyme, both in written and oral forms, and made booklets with accompanying DVDs that had animation for children. For our homeless population, our services to people experiencing homelessness include a bi-monthly bookmobile stop at the Guadalupe Community Center and the Guadalupe Apartments. We are able to help patrons resume library usage by waiving fines and getting them signed up for library cards if they do not already have one. We also provide book librarians with a focus on resume help and virtual environment navigation. We help set up email addresses and help them navigate assistance help. In the last year, we rolled out mobile devices to our Housing Navigation Center and Cold Weather Shelter to give patrons access to digital devices to also reinforce those digital skills that we help teach them. We also work with the Guadalupe Community Center to provide partner sharing equipment to include laptops and printers. This equipment is used for telehealth visits, completing job applications, and assistant applications, and just staying connected to their family through social media.
So for our services directed to seniors, we currently have lobby stops to 25 different facilities, and the majority of those lobby stops are at locations for senior living facilities, which range from independent living all the way to like skilled nursing homes and facilities. So we also offer book deposits at 3 different facilities. in which we take a collection of anywhere between 50 to 100 items, and we rotate those items out every other month. And then residents at those facilities are welcome to access those items within that facility at their own convenience as they are housed there and checked out to that facility. We offer the Book a Librarian appointments, which are our one-on-one sessions with our librarians. And these are often tech related. Many seniors, as you know, didn't grow up with the sort of technology that we have today, but they still want to stay connected to their friends and family. And plus, as we all know, the technology changes so quickly that even us as librarians sometimes have trouble keeping up. So we work very closely to provide technology assistance, especially with our seniors. We also work very closely with our seniors to provide readers advisory. Our library associates that we have are absolutely amazing at providing readers advisory, and they know their patrons so well. So that is one of our strong points. We offer regular and independent programming at many of our senior living facilities. We have the tech classes. You can see in this photo a tech class that Sandra, one of our librarians, did that was hugely successful. You can see that they're very engaged there. We also offer other programs such as read aloud programs, book clubs, movie clubs, that sort of thing. During the pandemic, we also took a lot of our popular take and make kits to our seniors. And those kits have been enjoyed by both the young and the young at heart. So they spanned all age groups often. And then this year we also had a greeting card exchange program with 2 of our senior facilities in connection with our hippie students. So in this program, the kiddos made some Valentine cards for the seniors in February. And then in May, the seniors made graduation cards for the hippie students, which were graduating from the preschool. So all 3 partner organizations that were part of that program found it to be very fulfilling, and will likely be continuing that program into the future. And then we, of course, we also promote, sign up and facilitate the Colorado Talking Book program with many of our seniors. So if you don't know what the Colorado Talking Books program is, it is a fabulous mail-based program out of the Colorado State Library for people who can't read standard print. So some of the lobby stop sites that we visit that aren't for seniors are to our reentry populations. So we provide services to these populations. We have a couple of lobby stops to the ICCS, so Intervention Community Correction Services, and Alternative Homes for Youth. And then we have also recently started offering regular programming at ICCS, and that is to improve their skills in technology, resume building, and job searching. We also offer summer reading programming and other independent programs at Alternative Homes for Youth. Here's a picture of an escape room kit program that we did at Alternative Homes for Youth that was really popular. So in addition to the lobby stop services, we also provide librarian appointments, especially at Jobs of Hope, which is a local organization which provides support to men who are seeking to re-enter the community, who have been released from incarceration, who had or have a gang affiliation, or who struggle with substance abuse. So as Brittany mentioned, our underserved communities is one of the largest priority population groups that we serve. So this does include our rural schools and communities, our low-income preschools, low-income areas, within the city centers, youth centers, and people with disabilities. And these are all identified as having barriers to service. And so now we're going to go into a little bit more detail on each of those.
All right, so a little bit more information about our services to rural schools. We do provide bookmobile visits to the rural schools. We are changing to a community model though, so we're only currently visiting schools that are not within another library service area currently. Before the pandemic, we were planning on rolling this out from the schools that we served that were within another library service area, but then the pandemic happened, which actually provided a pretty smooth transition into our classroom deposit collections, which we now offer to those schools. So we currently now have bookmobile stops at 3 schools in the rural areas of Weld County and have deposit collections at 3 schools as well. We also help provide and support book clubs in rural communities. We have done a few virtual book clubs as well as some in-person book clubs before the pandemic. And we also help provide classroom instruction supplements to rural schools. So teachers will give us requests to have books about a specific topic that they will be teaching about. For example, we have some standing requests on holiday themes, as well as we have some upcoming ones about marine animals. So then we gather books on those topics and then provide them to the schools to check out for a month or so, as long as they need them for that lesson. So I see a question in the chat about how long do classroom deposit collections stay in a classroom? And it's a great question. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the next slide, actually. And so I will remember to discuss that. We also provide database instruction to rural schools. All the students have access through their library cards to our e-resources, and then we instruct staff and students on how to access those resources. And we also work with the schools to partner with them for supplemental programming. For example, we've worked with local rural schools to provide our teen tour, which the district occasionally will get some sort of author or speaker and then have them go to various schools in Weld County and speak to students. So that's been pretty successful in the past. And we can go to the next slide so we can talk a little bit more about our classroom deposit collections. So our classroom deposit collections is something that we rolled out last year during the pandemic. We were planning on providing them to 2 schools, but we ended up providing them to I think it was 5 schools last year. Because of the pandemic, we had to cancel our bookmobile stops to the schools, so we provided deposit collections instead. So we do provide typically our classroom deposit collections to schools that are in small communities that are within 15 miles of a public library. So the schools that are further away than that will still receive bookmobile services. So each classroom gets a classroom deposit, and the deposits are pictured here. Each individual deposit goes into a different classroom of 40 grade level appropriate books that are rotated. And we base the grade levels mostly on AR levels currently. But we're trying to go away from that a little bit because AR is not super reliable to know content-wise and also lexile-wise what exactly kids want to be reading or should be reading. But that's the best way that we've been judging it currently. So these deposits contain a combination of nonfiction, fiction, graphic novels, picture books, and biographies. and depending on the grade level, depends on how many of each type of book they get. So like the first and second grade will have a lot more picture books in them, and easier level nonfiction books. And then the fourth and fifth grade have a lot more graphic novels because that's what they seem to be enjoying to read lately. So listed here are some sites of the book deposits that we have hosted or are currently hosting right now. And to answer the question from the chat, how long do the classroom deposit collections stay in a classroom? They stay in one classroom for 3 months. So we rotate them quarterly. And so, for example, we just in September rolled out our first round of deposits, and then in November we will go back and rotate them again. And I see another question is, do the kids get to keep the books? Not with these books. No, they are all library books that are just checked out in the classroom. And so they do not take them home. They're just for in-classroom use. We do give them the option to request books separately that they would like to take home and read, and then we can check them out to the students' library cards, so they can have a little more time with those books if they need it, and they can have more specific requests other than what we already provide in the deposit collections. Now, if you are considering doing deposit collections at schools like we are doing, one consideration you need to have is how many books it takes to do this. Currently, we have about 25, what was it? I just wrote it down. I think 2,500 items just for deposit collections that get rotated out throughout the year. And then we luckily were able to use a good amount of a budget last year to get a lot of these books, but not very many. So what we did to save money on this was we took books that were duplicates from the branch libraries, that they had more than 4 copies of the books. And then we had them send whatever books they didn't want, and then a few of books that were supposed to be weeded, but were still in good enough condition, we had them sent here. So a lot of the books, unfortunately, in these deposits are a lot of cast-offs, but we're working on refreshing them and getting them newer books, more diverse and more popular books through these deposits. So fortunately, we were given a good amount of money last year to be able to do that, so that we could have a wider variety of books in our deposit collections. I see a couple more questions about these. As Megan answered, yes, we do check the books to the teacher, but we do have in our MOU, we will not charge the schools for anything below 20% loss rate, because we understand that it's going to be a lot of items that get lost just because that's what happens with kids. And there's another question here about how do you budget for this? Like, what is a regular loss or a not okay, not sustainable loss? And then another question about that, about a separate budget item. Brittany, I'm going to let you answer these questions since you're more involved with that part of it.
We consider as acceptable loss rate is anything below 20%. Luckily, in our outreach budget that is connected to our collections, we do have a separate outreach collection budget that we use to buy children's material. And we have had that for many years. So that has just been built in. And traditionally, like Lindy said, we were servicing these schools with the bookmobile. So instead of having those items on the bookmobile that we replaced, we just really use that money to replace them in the deposit collections. Although we've seen a small cut in that over the last 2 years, just due to a dip in revenue, we have not seen a significant decrease in that budget. I hope that helps.
Yes, and please let us know if we're not answering your questions fully about this, because it was a very long process to get these rolled out and created. And so this year we're just kind of still finding our feet on them, but it's a lot smoother than it was last year. Last year we found a lot of roadblocks and had a lot of challenges, but this year things are working pretty smoothly so far. So please let us know if you have more questions about the classroom deposit collections, because this is something that we've been spending a lot of our time and resources on. All right. And a little information about the services that we provide to rural communities. So I'm the bookmobile librarian that mostly serves our rural communities, which is great because I grew up in a rural area. So it's nice to be able to see kids with a similar kind of upbringing as I had. And so we do provide bookmobile visits to these rural communities. We have community stops as well as school stops. And then at our school stops, community members are welcome to join us. And our community stops are usually based in places like post offices or parks. We do provide specialty checkouts at our rural communities on our bookmobile stops. So if anyone wants to check out projectors, laptops, anything, they can request them through us, and then we will bring them to them, and then they get to check out the items for 2 weeks, which is until the next time we come to that area. So they do not have to come all the way into town to come to a library to check out those kinds of items, which is great. We also provide book librarians in our rural communities. This can be either while we're at a bookmobile stop, someone can come onto the bookmobile. We always have a librarian on staff, or they can schedule a book librarian for a different time if needed, and we can find a way to meet up and provide a little more in-depth help, since our bookmobile stops usually are about an hour or so long. We also provide programming at our bookmobile stops often, and we try to provide some more additional programming when we can to these sites or to these towns as well. So we mostly do a lot of our programming in the summer through our summer reading program. We always, at all of our bookmobile stops, we have very interactive summer reading activities. And then throughout the school year, some of our other bookmobile stops provide a lot of like STEM related programs on the bookmobile as well. In the past, we've even been able to find community locations to host events, such as having performers come out, which has been a lot of fun. So in these photos here, the photo on the left was from several years ago. We had a performer come out during our summer reading program to one of our rural communities, and we were able to go to a community center for this. And then in the picture on the right, there is a local community library in one of the towns that we visit. That is just volunteer based. So we do a lot of support through them, and we have a public computer center at this library, and we do a little bit of programming with them as well. And so this photo on the right is from a summer reading program hosted at that library. We also focus a lot of our social media engagement to our rural communities. We use that as a great way to communicate with our communities about when we're coming out, what kind of services we're going to provide, as well as letting them know if we are canceling routes because of weather. And we also like to have a good, strong presence at community events. So we do a lot of library advocacy. We attend a lot of parades in our rural communities. And then when our communities have a celebration, for example, in Grover, Colorado, they have Grover Day, and we've brought the bookmobile and had an activity there in the past. And we also, especially during the pandemic, have found that it was very important to continue providing internet service to people in rural communities, because there is a great divide in good quality internet service in remote areas. And so during the pandemic, we did set up internet hotspots in the various locations, and we still have an internet service point in the Kersey Mobile Home Park, which is a small town near Greeley.
Okay, so as Lindy mentioned, over the last few years, we have been transitioning our bookmobile stops to focus more on community stops rather than school stops. And we've been replacing those school stops with those book deposits. However, we do still have a few schools which we service with the bookmobile. And as she mentioned, these are our rural schools, which are not serviced by any of our member or branch locations. They are K through 12 schools, and all grades are welcome and to check out books from the bookmobile. Although we usually just see the elementary grades, sometimes we see the older kiddos, but usually it's the younger ones. And although we are parked at a school in these communities, the community members are also invited and welcome to stop by the bookmobile and check out while we are also servicing the schools. So we still consider those to be community stops because we're able to service the community as well as the school. For our community stops, we do try to have stops at times that allow the community to access our bookmobile. This has been a big change for us staffing wise, as these stops are often later in the day after school gets out, or even sometimes later into the evening. We park at public places like parks, recreation centers, and post offices. We also have stops and park at centers of community places like churches or apartment community buildings. So to serve our low-income populations, we have bookmobile routes to low-income urban areas, including different apartment complexes in town, such as our Pines Apartments, Porterhouse Apartments, and Guadalupe Apartments. Those are all located within the city of Greeley, and that's just a few of the low-income housing here in town. We also have the internet service access points, which Lindy just talked about as well. We have access points at Pine Meadows and Villa Apartments. Those are both locations here in Greeley. We also have the one in Kersey, which she mentioned at the mobile home park. And we are currently in the process of adding one more and getting that one in place at Anna Gimstead Park in Evans. So not only would this one serve the after school program that is housed at that park, but it would also serve any individuals using the park as well as those in close proximity to the park. So that will be a really big benefit to that location when we get it in place. So we host these internet service devices in LibEquip, which is our specialty checkout software that we use. And we manage these manually on the staff side so that we can have an extended checkout period rather than the week-long checkout period that the regular specialty checkout items have. We received these devices as part of a grant, and as part of that grant, they must be placed in locations that will help children facing economic barriers. And we are so fortunate to have these devices just prior to the pandemic, as we were able to have these devices in place and into the community when children and adults alike were facing such extreme internet barriers throughout our community. So for our youth centers, our staff have a very special fondness for working with our local youth centers. These include the local Boys and Girls Clubs. We currently serve 4 different sites within Weld County, and the Rodarte Community Center, which also has that satellite location at Anna Gimstead Park. During the summer, we have bookmobile stops to some of these sites where we offer circulation services. So check out materials to the youth, as well as we do our regular summer reading programming. So we also offer some strategic support to Rodarte Community Center in the form of library development. So this facility has been working on their site library, and our librarians have been providing support to help them build and organize their own collection. We also work with the sites to help connect them with other community service providers. And we do provide year-round programming at Rodarte and Anna Gimstead. This programming is very STEM and STEAM heavy. We also do regular yoga programs and other summer reading programs at both Rodarte Community Center and Anna Gimstead. So this picture is from one of the last times that we were able to do in-person programming at our Milliken Boys and Girls Club. And you can see that we have our old bookmobile. So it's been since before the pandemic that we were able to have in-person programming at our Boys and Girls Club. But we are doing in-person programming currently with Rodarte and Anna.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the services that we provide to people with disabilities. I'm kind of the unofficial accessibility librarian in our department. And so we do quite a bit of programming for people with disabilities. So I do a music program at a local day program here in Greeley. So I do a music and movement program, which has been a lot of fun. Just recently, we've been able to go back to being in person for this program. During most of the pandemic, we had been providing, I'd been doing a virtual program where we would go through GoToMeeting, and I would be at home singing along with people and pretending to play the ukulele. And then they would be attending in their day program center. And then we also do some arts programming with some local community members. We did an art and craft program at a local residential care center that was in a smaller town outside of Greeley. And then during the pandemic, we provided take and make kits to both of these two places, the day program in Greeley and then the local residential care center, as well as some accessible take and makes to our senior facilities. So these were take and make kits that had all of the materials that you would need to do the activity within the kit, and it had some it was a more accessible kind of program, so people with low mobility and maybe not a lot of mobility with their hands could still do the activity. And it had some pretty simple, clear written instructions, as well as images to show each step, so that it's more accessible of a kit for people to do. So we provided these take and make kits most of the year last year, which was really great to be able to provide these services. And the take and make kits were able to go out to people through the day program who were selecting to stay home and not even going in. They were able to deliver these kits to people. So they still had a little bit of enrichment and crafting to do while at home, which was really great. We also provide technology help to people with disabilities. I'm currently doing Book of Librarians at the local Connections for Independent Living in Greeley. So I just had my first session a couple of weeks ago, which was a great success. It's been it's been very popular, which is great. And we also just are trying to be more cautious and aware of accessibility considerations within our department, and making sure that at our story times we are providing sensory story times, as well as headphones for the kids that maybe are feeling a little overstimulated. We have a wheelchair lift on our bookmobile, so it is wheelchair accessible. And it was just so great the first time we came to a school with our new bookmobile that had a wheelchair lift, to see a student who was in a wheelchair be able to come onto the bookmobile for the first time. And he was so excited to be able to choose his own books. So that was really great to see. We also provide lobby stops to independent living centers. Most of them are senior centers, but we do have a couple where it's for people with disabilities as well. So we provide material checkouts for that, as well as some programming. And we also work very closely with community members and organizations such as the National Federation of the Blind, and the local Insight Curtis Strong Center for the people with low vision. And we work with the Arc of Weld County and our local City of Greeley Accessibility and Inclusion Department to make sure that we are doing what we can to make sure that we are being accessible and providing services to people with disabilities.
So we work with the Colorado Early Education Network, excuse me, or the SCENES, to provide story times. So we provide 37 story times at 12 different SCENE locations every single month. So following that story time, each kid is able to check out one book. Teachers are also able to request materials that will help support their curriculum, and we check out materials to the teachers as well. And then we are very grateful to have a great partnership with one of our member library locations. So for the Milliken SCENE site, we partner with the Glenn A. Jones Memorial Library in Johnstown to provide that service where they do the story time and we provide the checkout service. We also work with the SCENES to provide parent meetings. So we work with the parents in order to teach them about early literacy practices and let them know about the library resources that are available to them. We also offer monthly story times August through November, and checkout services to Centro Colorado, which is a preschool for children of migrant parents. And at this location and a few of our other SCENE sites, we do offer a bilingual story times so that we can accommodate the high numbers of Spanish speaking students. So anytime we recognize that there's a high population of Spanish speakers at some of our preschools, we do try to offer that bilingual story time. And then in the past, we have also offered story times to some of our other partner organizations, such as the District 6 Early Childhood Center. However, due to the pandemic, we have yet to resume services to that site. So hopefully we'll be able to get back in there soon.
So in addition to serving our priority populations, we also have additional outreach efforts that we do. So these are usually provided by our events and experience team that utilize our pop-up vehicle, and we attend community events, which include local summer gatherings like Friday Fest and our Food and Flicks in our Southern service area. Our pop-up also plans engaging experiences to include pop-up parties that include music and movement and yoga and Zumba. We also work with our CBOCES, which is Centennial Board of Cooperative Education Services, who provide services to migrant families. We provide story times with yoga and attend community meetings to expose migrant families to library services and provide them additional support as they navigate resources in our community. We also partner with United Way to provide Project Connect, an annual event that focuses on connecting our community with different resources. We waive fines, sign people up for library cards, and distribute book donations to help families build up their own home libraries. So our community request form is our main tool used to start new services and to attend community events. All requests are filtered through this form to make sure we are capturing everything in one place. Before this tool, requests would come in from staff, community agencies, and community members through different staff, and tracking these requests and following up became very challenging and time-consuming. This request form makes our workflow much easier. These requests come in, it generates a work order in our work order management system, which is a Salesforce product. We can then evaluate the request as it compares to our priority populations and goals. An example of this is our discovery-based story times. We got 2 requests to provide story times at 2 pools over the summer. We only picked up 1 due to only 1 serving our priority populations. Then we made the decision to pick up the request or we pass it on. If we pick this up, then the request is assigned to a lead staff through the work order system, and that staff follows up with the requester. If we decide not to pick it up, the requester is then contacted to let them know why we did not pick up the request. So having a workflow and kind of knowing where everybody is supposed to be in the process has made this much easier and streamlined how we deal with all types of requests. So there are many challenges we experience when providing outreach services. Communication is one of the largest challenges, as we work with partner agencies that often have high turnover rates of their contacts. Workload is another challenge. Our workload is never done, and we are never able to provide services to all that need them, making it important that we focus on the highest need. This also has to be balanced with adapting to new services and innovative ideas that often require grant funding and all the work that goes into managing grants. Losing senior patrons is a common occurrence and has an emotional toll on our staff that often know their seniors very close and base their personalized services that they provide to them. So having that very close connection, this is something that we have intentionally addressed in each one of our lobby stop meetings. We allow for time to express that emotional, just to express our emotion and to normalize and humanize that is a very real thing for us. Also, secondary trauma is another emotional toll for our staff. These usually come from working with our immigrant and refugee populations, but also comes from working with homeless and reentry populations. Being able to discuss this openly as a group is an important decompression activity for our staff. Maintenance of our vehicle is another challenge. Being in charge of vehicle maintenance requires a working knowledge of mechanics and good working relationships with our maintenance department and service vendors. Investing in these relationships is an important aspect of ensuring maintenance issues are handled timely and accurately. For all new services, our staff are asked to go into unknown environments with little on-site support. The ability for staff to be flexible and adaptive is necessary, and learning through observation is essential, as there is not always someone there to communicate and support new services that we roll out. So really knowing how to function in unknown environments. Another challenge is evaluation of our sites and services due to the changing site contacts, but also because of the ever-changing environments of community organizations. Some are grant funded and are discontinued after the funding ends. Most partner organizations also have overwhelming workloads. So tracking usage of library services on site is not always their top priority, and this is often challenging.
Yeah, sorry, Brittany, we have a question in the chat that I'm going to let you answer. It's, are all of these programs and activities included in the outreach section of the state report, in parentheses, grab and go, bookmobile, pop-up, etc.?
So for things that are reported to the PLAR, That is going to include anything that we do directly with the public. So it's going to be like open to the public. So really only our open to the public bookmobile hours are included in the PLAR. Everything that is delivered to private organizations is not considered open to the public. So we do still track that, but that is not included in the PLAR. For our programming numbers, we do report both our instances and how many attendees we have, and that is both public and private. Does that answer that question? Did that say, Lindy?
Not yet. Oh, yes.
Are there any additional questions about today's session?
And feel free to unmute your microphones and turn on your cameras if you want to, or you can just put questions in the chat if you have any more questions.
And I'll just mention quickly, they were talking about vehicle maintenance and that kind of stuff. So if you didn't have the opportunity to attend last week's session, they actually went into a lot of detail about all of the different bookmobiles and other vehicles that they have and the maintenance. And so I'll pop the URL into chat in just a second, but if you haven't had an opportunity to either watch the archive or you weren't here last week, you can learn more information about that.
Here is also our contact information. If you would like to contact any of us directly, we are happy to answer any follow-up questions that you might have. And then upcoming also in this series, our very next session is going to be on our virtual services, followed by event services, community conversation, and our feedback loop, community partnerships, collecting data in outreach and community assessment, and then outreach advocacy. And then previously recorded is our outreach foundations. That was our first one, followed by mobile services that Christine referenced.
And I think as Alberto had mentioned, like so many great ideas, but I loved how you guys talked about also trying to figure out where your library organization's priorities lie. So I know we have libraries of all sizes who are attending today in Colorado, outside Colorado. So, you know, hopefully this kind of gives you ideas that you can kind of take back to your organization and find what works for your organization and your communities. And maybe you guys have other things also that you can share back, things that you guys have, that attendees have tried and are finding successful also.
And we haven't always been a large outreach department. So I think that important part is how we've evolved and how we started smaller and built on that. So I think that's a very important concept, right? That it doesn't always have to be large. It starts small and we build up over time on those things.
So we do have another question here. Do you have tips on where to start in terms of finding underserved groups in our own communities, or how to present information to leadership to illustrate the need for outreach and to serve underserved groups? That's a big question.
What I would start is what focus you want as far as underserved. If it's an economic discovered. A lot of that can be discovered by just going around and getting familiar with your community and seeing where is their activity, where are people's movements at. So those are important tools, but also data tools, right? Your demographic information from census. I know that in a session coming up, we're going to talk about some of our data tools that we use, Tableau being one of them, and how you can utilize that to see where your low income areas are based on census data. So those are some of the ways that we have started in our own department finding them. And if Megan and Lindy, if you have anything to add.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Megan.
Well, I was just going to say, Alberto also said just start small and, start making connections there. And so again, that's also what we did. We started small. As Brittany mentioned, we used to be a much smaller department with a much smaller